Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is part of our regular Ask the Rabbi series. But every time we have the Ask the Rabbi program, I have to be very grateful to Miriam Friedman for all of her efforts. This is sort of a combination of a newer program with a very, very long-standing program in the show, which is the pre-Pesach class, question and answer. But I think this Ask the Rabbi program that Miriam has started lends itself very well to this topic, to Pesach and people's questions. So thank you, as always, to Miriam, and thank you to all the people who submitted questions. There's going to be plenty of time, God willing, for people to add questions. But before we begin, I just want to share that the session tonight is sponsored by DeFranco, Rottenberg, and Tolchinsky families to commemorate the upcoming 13th Yortzeit. Their husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, Melvin Rottenberg, Menachem Mendel ben Tzvi Yehuda, on the 9th of Nisan. Zichrono Livracha. For those who have more of a history in the community, Mel Rottenberg is one of the names that everybody knows, a person of very much deserving of a lot of admiration and gratitude for his contributions and efforts within our community. I just want to share for a moment that Pesach, particularly the Seder, is very much the holiday of passing on traditions. And we know, of course, at the Seder, there's such an emphasis in passing on energizing the children and exciting the children, because the story of Pesach, the story of the Exodus, is what builds our legacy as a people. So it's harder when you're thinking of Pesach, it's harder to have a nicer compliment than to say, someone has a beautiful family. And when you look at a person's family, you can tell who they were. So I'll just share with you that I was talking to one of the newer rabbis in the community, and for some reason or another, the name Mel Rottenberg came up. He said, "Who's Mel Rottenberg?" So I just reeled off his three children. I said, Simi, Mindy, Jerry. Yeah. I said, so they're all children of the same person. Person really didn't know his family trees well. He didn't even know that they were siblings. So wow, that person are these people's father? Yes, yes. So that of course spoke volumes about him. So these beautiful mishpacha, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, they should all be a source of nachas for his neshama. And Tzivara L'chaim is a very, very special partner. Mr. Janet Rottenberg should continue to have much nachas from the family. So thank you very much to the family for sponsoring. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try the certain questions. All the questions are good. All the questions are important. Some questions are sort of more common questions, and some questions are a little more unique questions. So I'm going to front load with more of the unique questions. So if people begin to feel like, oh gosh, I know the answer to this already, then whenever you hit that point, it's probably going to be more of the same. Though everyone can always learn about everything, but so the more unique questions are at the beginning. Okay, this is a question I've been asked it a lot this year. Maybe it's how the days work out. On Shabbos HaGadol, is there a problem with eating bread away from the table and then continuing the meal without bread? So this is a very logical question just to think about for a second. Shabbos is relatively close to Yom Tov this year. Many of us will have already turned over to Pesach by Shabbos. I should make a plug. The shul is offering Friday night dinner and Shabbos lunch in the shul for Shabbos HaGadol. That's a very nice option for a lot of people. But if a person's eating at home and they want to have challah or bread for hamotzi, and then they want to eat a Pesach meal. So the easiest way to go about doing that is to eat hamotzi somewhere else. So the question is that all right? Is there any problem with that? So it's an interesting question. There is, in various situations, there's an issue in halacha with making a bracha on a food in one place and then going to a new place. There's an issue with that. But bread specifically, especially if a person has in mind that they're ultimately going to come back to the place that they ate the bread. If you make hamotzi in one place, you may continue your meal elsewhere. Okay, so if you want to, for example, make hamotzi on the porch, you should have in mind, but obviously you do. That's your plan. You're going to make hamotzi on the porch. You're going to sit and eat bread on the porch. Brush yourself off very well, surely, and then come back to the dining room. Your meal, that is perfectly fine. Here's the one catch. The one catch is benching needs to be done in the place that you ate bread. Okay, so it's fine. You wash, you make hamotzi outside. And by the way, kiddush should be made. I would say, if you think for a second, it probably makes the most sense, if possible, to make kiddush in the place that you have hamotzi. Okay, technically speaking, if the place that you're having hamotzi is actually in the construct of the house, let's say it's like on the porch, but the porch is part of the house. If that makes sense to everybody, say you have a screen in the porch or something like that. So, and really, you may make kiddush at the dining room table, and then wash and have hamotzi outside, out on the porch. If it's actually outside, like hamotzi in your backyard, really, most appropriate thing is to make kiddush in the backyard as well. Yeah, I hope that makes sense to people. But either way, benching should take place in the place that you ate the bread. So you can make hamotzi, go back to the dining room, eat a lovely meal, and then when it's time to bench, go back out to where you made hamotzi and bench. Okay? That's the story with that. This is a really, really important question. If a person is dealing with pre-diabetes, what can be done regarding the 4 cups and matzah? The goal is to limit as much as possible the consumption of carbohydrates. And obviously, as we know, it's a lot in one sitting, the matzah and the cups and okay. So that's a really important question. Let me first say there's an excellent article about this on there's an excellent article about this on the Starcase website. Specifically, I can't remember if it mentions diabetes specifically in the title. It's all about diabetes. It might be with dietary concerns, maybe. There's also an article on the CRC's website. I think it's a little bit less explicit about diabetes, but certainly touches on it. But if I may, I'm sure either one is a good article, but I happen to look very close at the Starcase article. It's very well done. I would recommend it. Thank you very much, Menashe. So here's the gist. Let's talk about how much is enough for matzah and the 4 cups. Okay, let's talk about how much is enough. So let's talk about matzah first. So there's all kinds of opinions as to the amount of matzah a person should eat at each moment in the Seder. We eat matzah 3 different times at the Seder, right? The first matzah, the korech sandwich, and the afikomen. There's all kinds of different opinions about that. I'm actually slightly concerned to say a specific amount because I don't want to make anybody jumpy. I don't want to drop my attendance for next time. So I'm gonna leave it as you're welcome to contact me later if you want to ask. But in terms of what the standard share for matzah should be. But what I want to share with you is that both for matzah, the first matzah, and the afikomen, and certainly korech, the hillel sandwich, whatever your shita is about what the share is for matzah, you could eat half of that in a situation of medical concerns, and diabetic concerns certainly falls under that. Okay, I hope I'm making sense so far. So whatever the share is for matzah, now obviously the share for matzah should be an important question in its own right. Whatever the share is for matzah, as long as you're getting that from a reputable source, you could be eating half of that as someone dealing with diabetes or pre-diabetic. Okay, I hope that's making sense so far. So that's statement number 1. Statement number 2, I want to talk about the cups. Okay, so there's a few halachos about the cups. Now, by the way, what I said about the matzah was very much an exception for a person dealing with diabetes. What I'm going to say about the cups is not even an exception. This is like the basic halacha, okay? in terms of the cups, there's a shear for how much the cup is supposed to hold, but you don't have to drink all of that amount. So we put in Hashomer that the shear for how much the cup is supposed to hold is 3.3 fluid ounces. Okay. Now, obviously, it's okay to hold more than that, but 3.3 fluid ounces is not a lot. Okay. Now, the basic obligation, it's a very nice thing to drink the whole cup, but you're not obligated to. It's a very nice thing to drink the majority of your cup, regardless of the size, but you're not obligated to. The obligation is to drink a majority of that amount of 3.3 fluid ounces. Okay, so what that means is if a person drinks 1.7 fluid ounces for any of the cups, for each of the cups, they're yotze. Did everybody process that? I want to be very clear about that. So it should be a cup that holds at least 3.3 fluid ounces. I want to be clear about that. But the only amount you actually need to drink is 1.7 fluid ounces. Statement number one. I should add that there's a halacha that specifically the fourth cup, you're supposed to drink a full 3.3 fluid ounces. The reason for that is following the fourth cup is when you make a bracha achrona, and you only make an after bracha if you drank that requisite amount. But if you have somebody else at the Seder who's less sensitive to these issues, or maybe they've had so much wine they don't even remember if they're sensitive to these issues. If you have someone at the Seder who's less sensitive to these issues, you really could keep on drinking 1.7 fluid ounces for the fourth cup and just ask the person who had 3.3 fluid ounces to say the bracha achrona out loud and have you in mind. Is that making sense to everybody? Everybody doing okay still? Okay. Now, I want to talk about the beverage that a person is drinking. Okay, so first of all, halachically speaking, wine is preferable to grape juice. Having said that, if a person has a very difficult time drinking wine, or there are health issues that it's not good for them to drink wine, of course grape juice is okay. Okay, but if a person could have one or the other, and it's not a big deal one way or the other, wine is preferable. At least in the article that I read, it pointed out that particularly if it's a dry wine that a person is drinking, on a diabetic level, that's probably healthier for a person anyway than a heavy sweet wine or even grape juice. Again, I'm certainly, sometimes I wonder how qualified I am as a rabbi, but I know I'm not qualified as a doctor. That much I know. So that's statement number one. Now, a big question that people ask a lot is, may a person dilute? May a person dilute wine? May a person dilute grape juice? It's a very important question. Okay, so this is one of the things I liked best about the Starkey article, and I don't want to go into great detail. You can look it up for yourself if this resonates with you. In other sources that I've looked at before, it's very confusing when they start talking about dilution. So here's what the Starkey says. What the Starkey says is, to be halachically considered wine, it needs to be 4% alcohol. Statement number one. It needs to be 4% alcohol to be halachically considered wine. Which means that if the wine that you're drinking is 4%, you shouldn't be diluting it with water. You could mix in some grape juice if that makes it easier for you, for example. I'm not sure that's going to help on a diabetic level, but you can mix in grape juice, but you shouldn't be mixing it with water if it's 4%. However, if it's a higher percentage alcohol, then as long as you're diluting it in a way that it doesn't end up less than 4%, you could dilute it up to 2/3 water, 1/3 wine. Which means, I'm sorry, I think I have something going in the background. I apologize. Sorry. Which means that ironically, a wine with a higher alcohol content, though on one level it's a little bit intimidating, because it's a higher alcohol content, you could actually do more diluting with a wine with a higher alcohol content than a wine with a lower alcohol content. So if the dilution doesn't bring it below 4% alcohol content, you could do up to 2/3 water and 1/3 wine. And in the Star K article that can be found on their website, it does a very nice job of showing the numbers. I don't want to belabor the point and go through the numbers, but I think this is very worthwhile. If you're using grape juice, what's the story with diluting grape juice? So basically with grape juice, the majority of the cup needs to be grape juice. But you could put up to 49% water in, as long as 51% is grape juice. But the light grape juices, it seems the standard recommendation is not to dilute further once you're buying light grape juice. You know what I mean? Ketamine advertises like light grape juice. Okay, so obviously, if people have questions, they can feel free to put it in the chat or call it out later. Or, by the way, just to contact me privately at your convenience over the coming days. But I hope that's helpful. It's obviously a very important matter. Okay. Moving on to, I think, some more, sort of common questions. All good, but just common questions. What's the story with bagged salads? Does it have to be marked as kosher Pesach? So this is an oldie but a goodie because all the organizations say, oh my gosh, bagged salads have to be marked as kosher Pesach, and then almost without fail, there are at least specific lines that they announce very close to time. You know what? Doesn't have to be marked as kosher Pesach, but all we can do at this point is go with what we're told. So the organizations do normally say that bagged salads should be marked as kosher Pesach. If a person has a difficult time finding that, it is all right to buy. It's probably a good idea in general to buy bagged salad that has a certification on it. But bagged salad without a Pesach certification, if there's no additives and there's no kitnios, you have to make sure there's no actual kitnios in the salad. You have to keep that in mind. It's if it's marked as kosher Pesach, so that's part of the certification agency's job to make sure there aren't kitnios in it. But if it's not marked as kosher Pesach, that's not their job anymore. But it would be appropriate if you end up buying bagged salad that doesn't have additives, and certainly can't have croutons in it, by the way, doesn't have additives, and doesn't have kitnios, it would be appropriate to buy it before Pesach. Okay, that's an important question. Okay. A similar but not the same. An individual put forward a question involving they like to buy raw vegetables that are cut, washed, and sealed in plastic bags from Giant and other grocery stores. Is that a Pesach issue? I don't have the expertise to speak to. Is that good in terms of the insects or not? I can't speak to that. But I would think you still have to check it. But the person has done their own research, I guess. But regardless, in terms of Pesach, let me rephrase that. I know who sent in the question. I'm actually confident the person did their own research. I just can't speak to it myself. In terms of Pesach, I would say very similar to the previous thing. So because there are probably different things used in the washes and things like that, if it's important to the person to buy this product, I would say they should be buying it before Pesach begins. If it's not important to the person to buy this product, it's probably better to steer clear of it. But if it's important to the person to buy the product, I would say as long as they're buying it before Pesach, it is reasonable to do so. I should just clarify a point. It sort of came up in the person's question. It's just good to know, when we talk about buying things before Pesach, what we actually mean is any time on Erev Yom Tov. In other words, if there's something, it's going to come up other times this evening also, X is okay, but you should buy it before Pesach. What's this story with buying before Pesach? Why are we so interested in buying it before Pesach? So the issue is like this. On Pesach itself, the severity of of eating chametz. It's a very severe prohibition. And on Pesach itself, we're extremely strict about even trace amounts of chametz. That's this famous halacha that chametz, normally things could be nullified 1 in 60. We don't say that about chametz. We're very strict about chametz. But the primary reason we're so strict about chametz is because if somebody eats chametz on Pesach, it's punishable by kares. It's a very grave punishment. If somebody ate chametz erev Pesach afternoon, you're not allowed to. You're prohibited in the Torah from eating chametz erev Pesach afternoon, but it's not the same level gravity isser. It's not the same gravity prohibition. So, if you went to the store and bought that salad, again, better to buy a salad that's marked kosher Pesach, but let's say you can't find a salad that's marked kosher Pesach. So he said you should buy it before Pesach. You could do it 3:30 in the afternoon, erev Pesach also. Now, I'm not promising that you're not going to get a dirty look from someone who wants you to be helping set the table at 3:30 in the afternoon. That's a different story. But just to clarify, when we talk about buying something before Pesach, it could even be erev Pesach afternoon. Okay. Also, a common question, but common because it's an important one. What is the story with medications on Pesach? So, as I have to be grateful, I have the opportunity to be grateful to Menashe Katz for so many different things. And one of the numerous things of which I'm grateful to him for, of what he does for the shul, is he's kind enough to send out all kind of pamphlets for me. So if you look at your cyber brief, I believe it was either first thing this morning or late last night, I'm not sure. There are different things in the cyber brief. One of them is a Pesach pamphlet. So there's a link to a Pesach pamphlet with what I hope are convenient resources for people. And in that is a letter from the CRC that, thank you, Menashe. In that is a letter from the CRC. It's one of the first things in the thing. Rabbi Einer was distributing it. I know when I was assistant rabbi, he was already distributing it. I don't know how many years before that he was distributing it. And the CRC has a very strong position. Not everyone agrees on this, but that's what makes Judaism fun. The CRC is of the position that when it comes to medications, and this would certainly include prescription medications, and it would certainly include over-the-counter medications that if a person didn't take them, they'd find themselves like debilitated. Let's say there's a pill that somebody takes for migraines. It's probably not a prescription, but if a person doesn't take anything, they're going to be in really, really bad shape. Let's say a person has a stomach issue. Let's say a person has bad allergies and they can't function. All these things are examples, and certainly including prescription medications, that if it's a pill and it's not flavored and it's a pill that someone swallows, they can take it without qualms on Pesach and not worry about the ingredients. Just broadly to explain the reasoning, just so people understand, these categories that I just mentioned, the person is qualified as a chola, person is qualified as a sick person, not, thank God, life and death sick, but sick, if they wouldn't take these medications that we just listed off. And for a chola, we're more lenient about, the rabbis are more lenient about certain things. So something that's not flavored and that you swallow whole, it's not in the normal way to eat it. So we're lenient in that case. So a prescription medication that's a pill that you swallow, or an over-the-counter thing that if you didn't take it, you would not be able to function. You would not be able to function normally. Those things, you may take them without qualms. You don't have to check the list to find out if there's chametz in them or not. Okay? If it's a syrup, like imagine like a cough syrup or something, or something for a child that they can't swallow pills, so they get a syrup or whatever it is, or something that a person chews, that's considered a normal method of consumption. And that's more of a question if you can take it on Pesach. And that certainly preferably we would try to find out if there's chametz in it in the first place. And if a person has a situation like that, you're certainly welcome to contact me. I have various lists that I'm going to start schlepping around in my little briefcase. So please feel free. But I would say if it's pills, it's not a shaila unless it's something that, like, I'll give you an example. There's whatever it is, ibuprofen. So every now and then, if I don't know, if my back's bothering me a little bit, I might take some ibuprofen. Bli ayin hara, I don't consider myself a chole. So something like that, if I was going to take, if I had a little bit of pain or discomfort, nothing terrible, if I was going to take that on Pesach, I would want to take something that actually doesn't have chametz in it, even though it's a pill that you swallow. I hope that's making sense to people. Okay, lactate. Okay, I'm terribly sorry, by the way. I don't mean any rudeness to anyone else who I'm not greeting, but it's just my policy. When I see Mrs. Bertha Spiro, I have to say hello to her. Mrs. Spiro, it's wonderful to see you. To you. Lactate. Lactate, the normal approach is that you could buy it before Pesach. Again, that's another example of something that we talk about buying for Pesach, even if it's not marked as kosher Pesach. I'm talking about the lactate milk, the like the milk substitute. Okay. Plates, cups, foil, plastic bags, paper towel. What's the story with hot food? So this is another example you get different opinions about. The first document that I have in this file that Menashe was kind enough to share with everybody, if you look in your chat, is a great 4-page document from the CRC. It's an alphabetized list of common things you might want to know about buying on Pesach with symbols. Check means it's fine. You don't have to worry about it if it's marked kosher Pesach or not. X means it's bad news. Like rye bread is not a good idea for Pesach. And and then there's like a triangle or something that's supposed to connote if you need to get it, only marked kosher Pesach. So not everyone agrees. The Star K, for example, is more strict about these things, but the CRC says paper, plastic. I'm pretty sure they say it by styrofoam also. I just want to double check super fast. All these things they say you may buy. Yeah, you may buy without qualms for Pesach. Hot, cold, all the same. Okay, so I personally, in the Rosenbaum home, we do that. Now, I've mentioned this Shaila before. So Shaila, if you're going to rely on the CRC, if you have to talk about things with a Midwest accent, so I'm machmir on that all year. Now, I want to also say, some people might be aware, they say some stuff in the CRC. I don't know if they say this. I know the Star Case says this, that like the first 3 paper towels in a roll, and the last paper towel in a roll, there might be cornstarch on it or something, some kind of kitnios. So you shouldn't put hot food directly on it. Okay, that's so if a person wants to be particular about that, I guess it makes sense. But bottom line is plastic, paper, styrofoam. I would encourage you to use it all normally, regardless of hot or cold, and not worry about if something's marked as kosher Pesach. Okay. What's the story with toothpaste and mouthwash for Pesach? Again, also in this document, I have a list. I'm just gonna now. The Star K has a much more extensive list than what I put in the document, but you have to buy the book to get that. So what the page I put in the document is what they leave as online, just like a general list. I'm going to read the toothpaste that they have there in the Star Case list. And if someone has a specific toothpaste that's, that they want to check out, you're welcome to ask me later or whatever. Just to read quickly, all AIM toothpaste, all Colgate toothpaste, Crest, any cavity protection gel and paste, Kids Crest is all okay, Crest and Scope, Pepsodent is okay, and at least one type of Sensodyne is okay. Those are toothpaste that are okay. And there's a longer list in the Stark book. Mouthwashes, all scope is okay. And certain types of Listerine are okay, but all scope is okay. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Certainly an important question. And again, and if you look at the file that Menashe sent you, that list is in the file also. Okay. And I hope that file that Menashe sent out is helpful to people. There also will be, thanks to the wonderful Simi Franco, there will also be in the lobby a print version of this file. I should also mention, I see some of you here have already availed yourself of which I'm really glad. We're doing something new this year to keep people up to date on Pesach things. One of the many wonderful innovations that Rabbi Pastalnik brings us, Baruch Hashem, we're having a WhatsApp group for Pesach Shilas. So it just went on today. So those comfortable with WhatsApp, it was also in the same side brief that Menashe sent out. He also included the way to sign on to that WhatsApp group. My guess is, there'll be questions either that you're wondering about that someone else will ask, or maybe you weren't wondering about, but now that you see it, that's a good point, and hopefully the answer will be helpful to you too. So that's just another way to sort of keep abreast of things. Okay, our cookbooks with remnants of food on them, a problem to use on Pesach. So I think this goes back to something we mentioned earlier. We're very strict, and again, and halacha teaches us to be very strict on Pesach with even small amounts of chametz. So the common practice is, I'll tell you, I guess this is a decent example. I'm a very frequent reader while I eat. That's sort of how I roll a little bit. So I'd be scared to think how many crumbs are in various books of mine around the house. Thank God we're blessed with many books and Sfarim in our home. Having said that, I don't check all of my books for chametz. I just don't, because the assumption is that whatever crumbs are such a small amount, the issue of you can't have a kazayis of chametz in one place. The crumbs that I have in a random book are not going to be enough to be a problem. But those books that I eat with at the table during the year, I don't eat and read from those books on Pesach. Because at my table where I'm eating, I am worried about little crumbs coming out, if that's making sense to people. So the barometer that we would use for like the kitchen or dining room where food is regularly being dealt with is a different barometer than other rooms of the house. So I definitely would not be comfortable using a cook personally. I wouldn't be comfortable using a cookbook from that I use the rest of the year. Most of us have all kinds of crumbs in our cookbooks and things like that. I wouldn't be comfortable using it on Pesach, certainly not in the kitchen. Maybe, a person, like has a cookbook like in another room or something and they check it, maybe that I hear. But other than that, I don't think it's a good idea. That's what I would say. Okay, this is an interesting question someone put in. They have a whole pile of unused aluminum tins, but it's been stored for months in a cabinet that's adjacent to chametz pans. Is that an issue? I don't think it's an issue. I appreciate the question. I think it's a very valid question. I think it's fine. A person might want to just check to just make sure there's no crumbs. You're like in the top, like in the top tin or in the top tin or like on the bottom of the bottom tin kind of thing. But other than that, I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine. Do you need to move the fridge to clean underneath it? No. You don't need to move the fridge to clean underneath it. The assumption is that you're not interested in the chametz back there. And even if you were interested in the chametz back there, who would ever want to move the fridge if not for doing it for Erev Pesach? So the assumption is not that you're going to go get it on Pesach. So you do not have to move the fridge to clean underneath it. And the chiropractor union is very upset with me right now. because that's always big business. Okay. Thank you for all these questions that were submitted. I'm going to start going through the chat now. You're welcome to submit more questions in the chat. And then once we're done with the chat, if you'd rather call out questions, that's also an option. Okay. Great question. Thank you for the person for submitting it. So I was talking at the very beginning about challah, like moving around on Shabbos HaGadol. What's the story with egg matzah? So here's the deal. Egg matzah is an option on Shabbos HaGadol, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Egg matzah is not a problem of chametz, but it should be egg matzah marked as kosher to Pesach, but we normally don't eat it on Pesach unless a person is infirm or not fully well, or so people who don't eat matzah before Pesach have no problem eating egg matzah because they couldn't even be yotze with that at the Seder. So the question is, maybe I shouldn't tray around with my porch. Maybe I should just get egg matzah from Motzi on Shabbos and not have to worry about oivei, what happens if there's crumbs of egg matzah lying around the dining room or whatever. So it is an option. It's not ideal. There's all kinds of questions as to how much an egg matzah a person has to eat. Then is it, absolutely positively sure it's hamotzi. So there's a lot of discussion about it. So if people felt that, gosh, they have all these kids running around the house and they're so scared, that the chametz is going to end up who knows where, and, and everything like that, then if they're really nervous about it, then egg matzah, or it's just very stressful, or maybe it's difficult to schlep around, maybe it's physically difficult to schlep around, then egg matzah will probably be a decent option. If it's just like 6.5 one way and 6 the other way, it's better to pass on the egg matzah. I hope that was a clear answer. Thank you for raising that. Okay, the person who put in about matzah and kiddush, I think that was just a thank you. Thank you for the thank you. If there was a question in there that I'm not understanding, please let me know. Oh, thank you very much. This is another big minhag. What's the story with Tums? So, I told you different organizations say different things. Different organizations say different things. I just want to find it. The star K actually is more lenient about Tums on this one, but I'll tell you, it doesn't say across the board. It says specific flavors. Okay. And the specific flavors that it says for Tums. Now, I want to clarify for a second. The specific flavors that I'm about to mention are kitnios. So if you say kitnios, and you're an Ashkenazi, you should only be having Tums if you're going to be really uncomfortable if you don't have Tums. So you're going to have really uncomfortable heartburn or something, then you can be lenient and have these. But if it's just like you just like to have Tums, basically I would recommend you not have Tums. Now, if you're Simi Franco, who, it's wonderful to be part of the Rottenberg family, but to be part of the Rottenberg family and marry into the Franco family is just doubly good, especially if you could do Sephardi minagim. So then you could be feeling fine and take the Tums that I'm talking about because they're kitnios. But for Ashkenazim, you should only be having the flavors that I'm saying if either you are having bad heartburn or you're gonna have bad heartburn. I hope that's making sense to people. And even that, for Sephardi or Ashkenazi, should only be the following flavors. Tums assorted fruit. It has to have a kosher symbol on it. Tums X assorted berries. Tums regular strength assorted fruit. And Tums sugar-free. And all of these have to have a kosher symbol, but they don't have to have a kosher for Pesach symbol. Thanks, Menashe. Thanks for the culinary comment. Okay. Yes, that's what. Yes, yes. Somebody submitted to me that they liked. It's a beautiful thing. They like to have a Gemara open at their table. So does that mean that I would say they shouldn't have a Gemara open at their table during Pesach? I don't. I don't. In other words, many times I'm preparing a shir or something while I'm eating. Uh, but what I do during Pesach in terms of Svarim is I'll frequently learn something from Haggadah, like even after the Seder, I'll frequently learn something from Haggadah when I'm sitting at a meal that I want to read a Torah content because I'm not using Haggadahs, with chametz, or if I got something for Pesach, that I haven't used yet during the year, that type of thing. Yeah, but I would agree. That's what I personally would say. But I wouldn't have any qualms. That's that Gemara that I eat over sometimes when I'm preparing a shir, unless I know there's a ton of crumbs in it. I would be fine sitting downstairs in my study using that Gemara. Okay, great question. Okay, a person is going out of the country for Pesach and leaving on Sunday. How do they burn the chametz? Okay, so so ideally, the best way to do it. I'm assuming the person is doing a bedika the last night that they're here. I assume that means Saturday night. I assume that's what that means. So ideally, what they would do is they would take that chametz from the bedika Saturday night and they would burn it Sunday morning. Now, I'll tell you a few things. Really, really, really ideally, they would take it with them and burn it wherever they are of Pesach, but I'm not sure that's so ideal. It's ideal in a theoretical world, but all you need is to find out that the bag broke and crumbs got out, that they're all over your suitcase, so if that makes you nervous, you don't have to take the chametz with you. And then you would just burn it, in the morning, Sunday morning, at some point Sunday morning. Um, if that's making you nervous, and maybe you don't like making the fire so much, or maybe you normally go to the communal burning. There is a communal burning this year at KMS, thank God. Thank you to KMS. Then you really, it's really okay. It's really okay to break up the chametz into pieces and flush it down the toilet. And to be honest with you, if you're doing the badika early, you don't really have to put out chametz in the first place. There's an idea of putting out chametz, but you don't really have to. Once we're on the topic of an early badika, one doesn't make a bracha at the beginning when they do an early badika, but they do say kol chamira afterwards. And if a person is not burning their chametz erev Pesach morning because they didn't want to take the chametz with them, then still, before the prohibition of owning chametz begins erev Pesach morning, they should still say that kol chamira that we normally say when we burn chametz. They should not say it Sunday morning. I would very much assume, let me double check, let me see if it's in here. Hold on 1 second, please. It's not here in this list, but I would very much assume that a heavy cream should have a Pesach certification. I would definitely assume that. If a person launders their thrift cloth before Pesach and it's clean, it should be fine to use on Pesach. Thank you. You don't have to put any of these farm away, but I just wouldn't use it if all you're doing is drinking coffee over it. I don't see an issue. Hold on 1 second, please. The CRC says that dish gloves should be ascertained that there's not a Pesach issue with it. Not sure I really understand the deal, but that's what they say.
Because sometimes they have starch.
But that's a case even if it's not powdered?
Oh, they're saying even under powder. Okay.
Yeah, I want to. That's sort of what surprises me a little. Let me just double check. Yeah, say it either way. So I don't know what the story is, but okay. But thank you, Menashe. Any other questions or comments? Sue?
I have a product here. I can't find if it's kosher or not. I'm going to show it to you.
Okay.
It has an OU on it.
Yeah.
It's decaffeinated iced tea, unsweetened, made with real tea leaves. Its ingredient is tea.
So what I'm going to do right now is I am going to pull out. This is the OU has a great guide, and it's available online, by the way. So it's just and it's amazing because so many of the products that we use are certified by the OU. So in this online document, they have all the list of all the things certified by the OU that don't need to be marked as OUP.
Right. This is not in the book.
So then I would imagine that it does need to be marked.
And it's not in the book. It's not
Right,
in either
in the book. Then I would assume it. Then I would assume it has to be marked. But it's an OU product, Sue.
It's an OU product.
So then I would assume if it's not in that list, I would assume it has to be kosher l'Pesach.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Menashe. Menashe just put it in the chat. Anything else? Any other comments? Okay. I want to wish everybody a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, and just to reflect for a moment, it's like shocking. It's shocking to think that, Sukkot and Pesach are the axes of the Jewish year. They're exactly 6 months apart. This year, 7 months, because of the leap year. But it's amazing. When we were putting up our sukkahs, we didn't know from any of this October 7th stuff. Didn't happen yet. And then right at the end of Yom Tov, and it's like we're living in a different world now. And I just think it's so important to just reflect a little bit on Pesach. Two things, if I may just share. One thing is that we really believe that God can redeem in big and small ways at any moment. That's the story of Egypt. That's what happened. There was no logical reason why God should, not to the human mind at least, why God should save them when he did. And so I think there's a lot of encouragement to be taken from that. And on the other side of it, there are so many people in Klal Yisrael. We, so many of us, not all of us, but so many of us have the opportunity to enjoy Yom Tov and a Seder with various family members and friends, and to realize how many people there are in Klal Yisrael that won't be with those people this year. Whether it be, heaven forbid, they're gone, whether it be they don't know where they are, whether it be they're protecting our country, Israel, and to have I think at some point, if a person is blessed, he's surrounded by loved ones at the Seder, I think at some point a person has to stop and just reflect and think about what other people are experiencing at that moment. But also, I think it's just it's so easy for us to take these things for granted. And I think it's just one drop more, just a reminder to us about how blessed we should feel. And all those families that are not complete right now because of hostages or soldiers or people in hospitals, they should all be complete B'karov soon and speedily. But how much of a blessing it is to have these people in our lives. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. As always, thank you to Miriam. Thank you to the Rottenberg family. Thank you to all the people who submitted questions, and thank you to everybody who made it such a nice group tonight. And thank you very much. Chag Kosher v'Sameach.
Chag Kosher v'Sameach. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.